This man is simply mad and has incurred the wrath of both gods and men. Just now, Carson, accompanied by Kaisen and 2 girls, arrived at the luxurious villa at the top of Yen Lake. Kaisen knocked on the door. The hooligan who didn't wait for the door to be opened asked them who they were. Carson led his men straight in. I know this is Carl's property, but it will be mine from now on. The hooligan looked panicked as he said they were trespassing on private property. Carson's eyes turned cold. Instead, he thanked Carl for giving him this mansion. He even shouted angrily after introducing himself as Carson, followed by Kaisen. The hooligan was scared and hurriedly ran away. Carson is really out of control. He directly used brute force to take over the nest. Then, he ordered Kaisen to inform Bo and Jax to collect various spirit stones, and offered the temptation of exchanging every 10 pieces for an essence-nourishing pill. Then he looked at Callie and let them choose their own rooms. He came to the balcony and looked at the scenery in the distance. He took a deep breath and found that the spiritual energy here is much richer than in the city center. With beautiful scenery surrounded by mountains and lakes, it is the perfect place to build the great circulation of heaven formation. Just then, a figure appeared in front of him. Carson didn't expect that the people from the Nangong family would come knocking on his door so soon. This person is Clayton, the sword attendant of family leader Edgar. He didn't give Carson any chance to react. He started with the most powerful move, Qing Yun Sword Intent. With a furious slash of the sword, Carson still unleashed a punch. Mountain-splitting strike of the heavenly Xian Divine Fist. The powerful sword intent was instantly shattered and broken apart. Clayton was shaken and spat out a mouthful of blood, then thrown backwards. However, what surprised Carson was that the guy who took a punch from him was unscathed. His strength was indeed quite good. Warren, hiding in the dark, was extremely anxious. He was about to run when Carson caught a glimpse of him. It's your turn, the hooligan hiding over there. Warren stood up in a panic and said, I advise you not to touch me. Otherwise, you will be in big trouble once my dad emerges from seclusion. As soon as he finished speaking, his body suddenly exploded. Carson retracted heaven slashing and casually dropped a sentence. Even if your old man doesn't come looking for me, I'll still go find him. When Carson looked over again, he found that Clayton had already escaped without a trace. However, he could not last more than 7 days. Carson is now looking forward to Edgar's strength. 1 week later, Kaisen brought the jade collected by Bo to them. Carson sighed. The bosses of the mortal world still have some uses after all. At this time, Daisy called. She wants to invite Carson to her birthday party the day after tomorrow. Carson hung up the phone. He suddenly remembered that something happened on Daisy's birthday. But in this life, he must protect Daisy at all costs. Not long after, Carson used Jade to set up the spirit gathering formation and added a concealing spell without his permission. Hardly anyone could break into the villa. When the last drop of liquid medicine dripped into the bottle, Carson picked up the bottle satisfactorily and muttered to himself, Why another layout can begin. Bo really knows how to enjoy himself. Arranged to Beauty to give him a massage. Suddenly heard someone calling him. He impatiently turned around and saw that it was Carson. He was instantly frightened, sweating profusely. He sat obediently, looking respectful like a good boy. Looking at Carson taking out a mineral water bottle, he couldn't help but be confused. After Carson dripped a drop onto the ground, he said, This is spiritual energy water. Only when the spiritual energy water fell into the bushes, a flower bud quickly grew. In the end, it actually bloomed into 3 beautiful and vibrant roses. Bo looked incredulous. This is simply miraculous water. Carson explained that spiritual energy water has remarkable effects on plants, but for humans, it needs to be taken over a long period of time to achieve the benefits of preventing diseases and prolonging life. Bo's understanding was once again refreshed. This is not just miraculous water, but also the legendary elixir of life. Bo immediately wanted to buy it, However, Carson suggested that he establish a company instead and sell diluted versions of the spiritual energy water, offering Bo a 20% profit. Even if he didn't offer any profit, it would be fine. He could live to be 100 or 80 years old without any issues. But Bo had a question. Carson has always viewed money as dirt. Why is he trying to make money by selling spiritual energy water this time? Carson didn't explain and just said he wanted to set up a scheme. Bo knew he couldn't inquire about Master's secrets. He quickly changed the subject and asked what name the company would be given. Carson pondered for a moment and said, "Let's call it Yin Lake Life Elixir." Bo quickly flattered, "It will certainly be a bestseller." The next day, Carson set off for Daisy's home by high-speed train. He remembered that Daisy's 18th birthday banquet was held very grandly. He had to go to White Horse County to attend. Just then, a man and a woman came walking towards Carson. They arrogantly demanded Carson to switch seats with them. Carson couldn't be bothered to deal with such clowns. Purple-haired woman immediately had her brother prepare to teach Carson a lesson, while her brother spoke eloquent words of persuasion. In fact, he had already harbored the intention to take action in his heart. Carson had just gotten off the car a few hours later. He was then stopped by the siblings, who had just stood in his way. It turned out that the man had found it inconvenient to make a move with too many people in the car just now. He clenched his fist tightly and threw out some harsh words. Carson looked disdainful. A guy from the inner realm dared to show off in front of him. He gave him a big slap in the face without hesitation, almost making the hooligan doubt his life choices. If Carson wasn't in a hurry, it wouldn't have been as simple as a slap in the face. The purple-haired woman was so scared that she held onto her shoulders and trembled. Carson always seeks revenge regardless of whether you are a man or a woman. He lifted up this arrogant woman. He directly threw her into the nearby trash can. He took a taxi and soon arrived at Daisy's Cheen garden. Carson originally planned to give Daisy the gift and leave. I did not expect that the couple who looked down on Carson were also present. In addition, there is also a wealthy second generation from White Horse County, Stetson. It seems that there will be some trouble here. This woman repeatedly challenges Carson's patience. She is full of disdain and looks down on others in every possible way. She also said that adding his mom's image company is not as good as any one person at Daisy's banquet. It's simply ignorant to the extreme. Carson finally lost his patience this time. For the sake of Uncle, this is the last time I'll tolerate you talking to me like this. Now get lost. Anna was actually scared. However, she still felt that Carson was unreasonable. Carson felt sad for this ignorant woman. She only knew about the power of the Mu-Rong family, but she didn't realize that she was no longer the Carson of the past. At this moment, Stetson greeted the man and woman who walked in. These two people are the siblings who were scolded by Carson, aren't they? Stetson immediately reported that Daisy's rumored boyfriend had arrived. Charlie nodded, indicating that he was going to teach him a lesson. Look over in the direction that Stetson is pointing. He immediately showed a look of resentment. I didn't expect it to be this kid. Charlie then walked towards the door under Stetson's puzzled gaze. Before long, Charlie followed a burly middle-aged man into the room. It turned out he had gone to fetch reinforcements. This man is Matthias, the leader of the Zhou family, second only to the Mu-Rong family. Matthias walked up behind Carson with a smug look on his face and shouted, "Kid, apologize to them, and I'll let you off the hook." Carson took a sip of red wine and calmly replied, "Get lost." The remark shocked the whole room. They all thought Carson was asking for trouble. Matthias's face immediately darkened to the extreme. The two siblings, Yuan family, showed extreme joy on their faces. Without waiting for Matthias to speak, the thin elder behind him coldly scolded, "How dare you be so disrespectful to Matthias? You are being reckless. I think you are tired of living." Carson glanced at the thin elder with a hint of disdain. A mere martial artist at the major mastery level of the inner realm dared to act arrogantly in front of me. Get lost. The elder sensed the powerful aura emanating from Carson and immediately stood in front of Matthias. At that moment, Hank walked out. He saw Carson and Matthias confronting each other with drawn swords. He hurried over to mediate. However, Matthias expressed that he had just been publicly humiliated and could not swallow this insult. Hank looked at Carson with a sense of helplessness. This kid really is a troublemaker. He could only let Matthias save face for his sake, although Matthias agreed to give face. However, he looked at Carson with undisguised killing intent in his eyes. You're lucky this time. But don't let me catch you outside. Matthias left with a gloomy expression. Charlie and Amelia had an unpleasant look on their faces. But since Hank has spoken, they didn't dare to continue making things difficult for Carson. Hank walked up to Carson again and said seriously, I even have to give in to Matthias. You are simply too arrogant. Carson responded lightly, I'm not arrogant. I just have the ability. No matter how powerful your clan is, it's worth nothing in my eyes. Hank could only sigh helplessly. Even if his daughter liked Carson, he wouldn't simultaneously offend the Ewan family and the Joe family for Carson. Suddenly, a suitor of Daisy excitedly exclaimed, Quick, look! Daisy is coming out! Daisy was seen wearing a long golden dress, her graceful figure resembling that of a celestial maiden descended to earth. The woman who saw this was so envious and jealous that the men around her drooled. Daisy walked slowly in front of everyone with a graceful and charming smile, showing a calm and confident demeanor. Suddenly, all the older generation envied Hank for having such a good daughter. Then it was time for the gift-giving segment. Various high-end and classy gifts kept coming one after another. Anna walked over to give Daisy her blessings. Daisy responded with a smile. Her gaze involuntarily turned towards Carson in the corner. She suddenly felt a sense of loss. Could it be that he didn't prepare a birthday gift for me? But she immediately comforted herself that as long as he could come, it would be fine. It would mean that he still cares about me. At this moment, Stetson looked at Carson disdainfully and said, Carson, what gift did you prepare for Daisy today? Carson didn't answer but instead asked, Daisy's birthday. How could I not prepare a gift? He walked slowly to Daisy's side. He seemed to perform magic. A small and delicate jade pendant appeared in his hand, and he gently put it on Daisy, saying, I made this myself. Happy birthday to you. Daisy blushed and shyly said in a soft voice, Thank you. Daisy's admirer watched this scene with jealousy burning in his heart. Charlie is especially infuriated, his teeth clenched, veins bulging. Carson handed over the jade pendant, said he had something else to do, and then walked away. Daisy felt a wave of disappointment, wanting to persuade him to stay for dinner. At this moment, Stetson jumped out again and insulted Carson by saying the jade pendant was a cheap imitation. Carson turned his head, with a cold look in his eyes. If it weren't Daisy's birthday today, I would have slapped you to death long ago. Stetson haughtily tilted his head back and snorted coldly. How dare you give street stall goods as gifts and not allow others to comment? Daisy quickly helped Carson out of the situation. As long as everyone can come, it's fine. The gifts really don't matter. Carson's face was indifferent, and his gaze was scorn. The gift I, Carson, have given is not something you mundane people can compare with. After speaking, Carson pointed a finger at the jade pendant on Daisy's chest. Immediately, a cool breeze emanated from the jade pendant, causing everyone to feel refreshed and invigorated in an instant. Charlie was shocked and stunned. He didn't expect Carson to casually give ritual implements as decorations. At this time, Arthur, the steward of the Murong family, wanted Daisy to show him the jade pendant. Daisy took off the jade pendant and handed it to Arthur. Arthur held the jade pendant in his hands, carefully sensing it for a long time. Then he solemnly said to Daisy, Miss, you must carry this jade pendant with you at all times. After speaking, Arthur looked at Stetson and sneered. This jade pendant is the most precious among all the gifts. Compared to it, all other gifts are rubbish. He then expressed his gratitude to Carson. Carson smiled without saying a word. Stetson was fiercely slapped in the face, almost causing him internal injuries. Anna's gaze at Carson once again became complicated. How many unknown secrets are still hidden in you? Daisy's little face turned excitedly red. Infinite sweetness surged in her heart. Carson gave me such a valuable thing. It seems I am still very important to him. Suddenly, a bodyguard from the Murong family was hit and flew in. Daisy's birthday, no flower basket was sent. Someone actually set a funeral wreath. This is simply a crazy humiliation to the Murong family. Hank immediately became furious, questioning them if they knew what kind of place this was. Of course I know. Isn't this the Qing garden of the Murong family? A man slowly walked in. Hank looked puzzled and asked, "Who are you exactly?" The person chuckled and said, "Who I am is not important, but I want to seek justice for the dozen lives taken by the Triad Society back then." Just as everyone was puzzled, Hank's face turned pale, drastically changing. He immediately ordered his men to take down this person. The person's face showed a mocking smile. "Hank, moving so quickly. Are you afraid that I will reveal the predecessor of your Murong family?" As soon as he finished speaking, the bodyguards of the Murong family had already rushed over. But they were all knocked down by the hooligan who just carried the wreath with 3 punches and 2 kicks. The man chuckled at the sight. Had the Murong family started using fake bodyguards after whitewashing their reputation? No need for Hank's orders. Arthur, without hesitation, stepped forward and stood in front of the opponent. How dare the power of the outsider realm act so arrogantly here? Suddenly, powerful energies surged from both of them, scattering in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the two had exchanged hundreds of moves. To some ordinary people, it felt like watching a movie. Suddenly, Arthur seized the opportunity and landed a punch on the man's chest. He called out, "Master," behind him. Hank was suddenly taken aback. Could there be a master behind this man? A man in a white suit with a scar on his face walked in. "Does Hank still remember me?" "You are Harrison, son of Ashton. Looks like you haven't forgotten about this scar you personally inflicted. Can't believe I am still alive. The day you annihilated my Ren family and swallowed up the Triad Society is the day you will pay the price." Hank no longer speaks nonsense since they are mortal enemies. He directly ordered Arthur to take action and kill. Arthur burst out with a powerful aura, unleashing his potential to the extreme. Harrison laughed as if he didn't care at all. "Wait until Arthur gets close, then punch him and send him flying out." Seeing Harrison about to make a fatal move against Hank, Daisy stepped in front of him. Harrison immediately pulled Daisy into his arms, threatening what would happen if he humiliated his daughter in front of Hank. As soon as he finished speaking, a heavy blow landed on his face. With a bang, he fell heavily to the ground. Carson hugged Daisy and chuckled. "Bullying my classmate in front of me. This is really embarrassing for me." Harrison responded disdainfully. "What kind of person are you? How dare you not wait for him to speak?" Carson quickly cut in. "What do I not dare to do?" Just as the words were spoken, that man launched a surprise attack towards Carson. Carson casually struck and directly killed the man. Then he asked Daisy to take cover in a safe place first. Because Carson realized that the man across the street was not simple. Only to see Harrison unexpectedly flying up into the air. Sure enough, as Carson expected, this guy is a grandmaster. But in Carson's eyes, at best, he can only be considered a half-step grandmaster. Harrison laughed wildly and unleashed the great blood demon palm. A huge blood-red palm instantly condensed behind him. Arthur recognized this move and immediately identified the person's master as Grandmaster Ezekiel, known as the 8-armed divine ape in the transformation realm of Southeast Asia. In the blink of an eye, the great blood demon palm with endless coercion smashed down on Carson's head. Daisy was deeply worried for Carson when she saw the situation. Carson just gave a faint smile. So weak, it's so weak that I can't even be bothered to comment on it. He was still preparing for a punch mountain-splitting strike. The fists and palms collided with a loud bang. The great blood demon palm was instantly shattered with a punch. Harrison was also sent flying backwards by the impact of the punch. Carson didn't pause. He pointed his finger like a knife, preparing to strike with the heavenly Xian divine fist second form river splitting. Just as Harrison steadied his figure, he felt a deadly aura coming at him. He had to escape immediately. Suddenly, Daisy screamed. Harrison actually reached out for Daisy, intending to use her as a hostage to threaten Carson. A blue light suddenly burst out from the jade pendant on Daisy's chest, only to see a blue light shield protecting Daisy from Harrison. It bounced back Harrison's full force blow. Daisy then realized that this jade pendant was actually an amulet ritual implements, and a warm feeling surged in her heart. Anna's eyes betrayed a hint of envy and jealousy at this moment. She secretly wondered if Carson would give her such a jade pendant if she went to ask for it herself. Carson slowly walked towards Harrison and let out a scornful laugh. "Can you stop picking on a young girl all the time?" Harrison turned around and ran away without saying a word. He ran away without saying a word and even mocked Carson. "I admit you are strong. But if I want to escape, no one can stop me." Carson reached out and grabbed a branch from afar. As he swung it towards Harrison, he released spiritual energy attached to the branch. Arthur was shocked once again. With internal energy released outwardly, this young man turned out to be a Transformation Realm Grandmaster. Harrison's chest was pierced by a small branch, creating a large hole. Before dying, he shouted that his master would never let Carson go. Carson didn't care and turned his head lazily, not bothering to look again. At this moment, Arthur forced a bitter smile. "An 18-year-old young man Grandmaster, if I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it even if you killed me." Remembering that he had mocked Carson for being too arrogant twice before, Hank felt extremely ashamed. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. Seeing Carson's strength and his caring protection of Daisy, Anna is now filled with regret and unwillingness. She finally understands that she was the most ridiculous person. Carson asks Daisy to continue the banquet. He is going to clean up some trash. The trash is of course among the crowd and the terrified Matthias. Carson has already walked over. Matthias quickly begged for mercy. Carson has always been ruthless to those who want their own lives. Even Matthias knelt on the ground begging ceaselessly. He still slapped him on the head. Matthias died. Carson turned to look at the siblings of the Ewan family. Amelia was so scared that she immediately collapsed on the ground, wailing and crying loudly. Charlie quickly knelt down to beg for mercy. Carson just looked at him with a plain face. After a brief moment of consideration, Carson only invalidated his cultivation achievement for Daisy's sake. At this moment, Hank hurriedly bowed deeply to Carson, thanking him for saving his life. Carson waved his hand, indicating that he did it only for Daisy. Daisy saw Carson about to leave again. She shyly asked him to accompany her to spend her birthday before leaving. Carson, thinking he didn't have other things to do for the time being, smiled and agreed. Seeing this scene, a strong sense of sourness instantly filled Anna's whole body. A deep sense of unwillingness could be seen in her eyes. Bo is now impatient and anxious. He doesn't even have the mood to go for a massage. When Carson returned, he suddenly felt relieved. It turned out that the Zijing Gongsun family was impersonating their life elixir to disrupt the market. By looking at Carson's eyes, you can tell he's going to extermination of a family again. The scene shifts to the estate of the Gongsun family. It looks like this time, the Gongsun family has invited quite a few clans. At this moment, the family leader Adonis came out to give a speech. His main purpose for this gathering is to prevent Life Elixir from entering Zijing province, and to counterattack to completely dominate the market. Someone raised questions very quickly. Adonis explained that they have developed a product better than Life Elixir. In fact, he just wants to dominate the market by taking advantage of these unsuspecting big bosses who are eager to follow along. Just as Adonis laughed triumphantly. The Yin family, who is a rival to their family, has yet to make a move. Adonis smiled and asked him to make a statement. Elliot obviously didn't quite believe him. He asked back how he analyzed the life elixir. Adonis's smile froze. He claimed that only by helping him could he share the secret. Elliot smiled knowingly.
That won't do. Otherwise, who knows if you are deceiving us?
Adonis immediately grew angry. But Elliot still didn't buy it. Adonis also stopped pretending and clapped his hands together. A martial artist named Jeremy stepped forward. He threatened that if they didn't agree with the Gong Sun family, it would mean death. Elliot still refuses to compromise. He declares that it's just a matter of changing the family leader from the Yin family. With a command from Adonis, Jeremy's fist slammed toward Elliot. At a critical moment, Carson grabbed his arm and pushed Elliot backwards. Adonis saw that the young man was extremely panicked. Carson's reputation had long been spread. How could he not know him? Elliot is very grateful for Carson's help. But he urged Carson to leave quickly.
Do not make meaningless sacrifices,
Jeremy shouted angrily.
I am Jeremy of the Yu sect. I advise you not to meddle in this, Carson replied with a faint smile. You only have one chance. Show me your best skills.
Jeremy, who was humiliated, immediately attacked Carson. Carson smiled and shook his finger. I told you. You only have one chance. Why don't you cherish it? Looking at Jeremy's swift punch, Carson placed one hand behind his back. The other hand made a strong press into the air. Jeremy suddenly sprayed blood from his mouth. His body, as if heavily hit, lay awkwardly on the ground. Adonis now cold sweat and fear all over his face. Jeremy struggled to get up from the ground. He disdainfully said,
Do you think you've won?
He took out a palm-sized bronze mirror from his bosom and spat a mouthful of blood onto the bronze mirror. Jeremy is very pleased at the moment. Carson looks surprised. He didn't expect it to be a high-quality defensive ritual implements. Jeremy laughed extremely arrogantly and said,
Can you break through the defense?
As soon as he finished speaking, Carson angrily slammed his palm down with the river-splitting move. Just then, a flash of blue light appeared. Jeremy was hit and flew out several feet, his life hanging in the balance. The palm-sized bronze mirror fell at Carson's feet. Carson picked it up and took a look. The carving depicted a bewitching woman, resembling the female figures from ancient Western regions. With a thought, the bronze mirror was stored into the storage ring. Carson then looked at Adonis. Adonis was so scared that he knelt on the ground begging for mercy. Carson directly pointed out that Adonis was shot in the head. Watching, Carson casually wiped out the Gong Sun family. Previously, those who had catered to the Gong Sun family's big bosses all knelt down and pleaded for mercy. Carson first asked Elliot to contact Bo to handle the matter of the life elixir from Zijing. Then he said lightly,
Deal with the rest. I'm just here to destroy the Gong Sun family.
At this time, Jeremy, who was knocked unconscious, finally woke up. Carson came up behind him and asked,
Where did this bronze mirror come from?
Jeremy explained that it was snatched from the hands of a grave robber, who had obtained it from the depths of the Naya ruins in the desert. Carson was startled. Could it be that the Naya ruins are the Jingjue ancient city? Was there once a cultivator there? Subsequently, Jeremy took Carson to the entrance of the Jingjue ancient city, Zaklama Sacred Mountain. Carson suddenly startled, because the large gap in front was cut off by a sword. There was still a trace of spirit power left on it. Even Jeremy sighed at the seeming chiseling of this rock wall, smooth as a mirror. The two had already reached the end of this narrow path. What caught their eyes was a vast ruins of an ancient city. This is the former Jingjue ancient city. Suddenly a question arose in Carson's mind. What force buried this ancient city in the endless desert? Carson's spiritual sense reached out and found a temple used for worship. And the entrance to the Jingjue Queen ancient tomb is right here. The entrance has already been opened. This is probably the work of those grave robbers. But Carson has already sensed that those below are not grave robbers. The two of them went downstairs. They found two groups of people and horses facing off. Monk must be a master of the nearby sacred sect. The elder behind the girl also looks extraordinary. Jeremy has already made a preliminary analysis of the opponent's strength. Carson was staring intently at the tomb gate, seemingly with a formation carved on it. When he walked down, the girl pointed at Carson and asked coldly,
"Who are you?"